2. What's up, everybody? Check 1, 2. What's up, everybody? Let's go.
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one.
Peace and love, friends and neighbors, supporters and haters. I see you all. I appreciate you for being here. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a live stream to step to. Think of how many weak hip-hop podcasts you slept through? Time's up. Sorry I kept you. It's your man, Manny Faces, rocking with you. Hip-hop can save America. I was gone last week, of course, if you're a frequent watcher. What do you call it? Like a frequent, not a frequent flyer, like a regular, if you're a regular. Thank you. Even though you're special. You're not just regular. You're super special. So I thank you for rocking with me. We are rocking tonight. Got a good interview. Back in the interview game. I've got some hip-hop news. It isn't about dumb-ish. You know what I mean? What up to Andrew Wang in the building? Yo from Yo, meaning Yonkers, Y-O, as they say. Up to my man, my mellow, Raphael Travis. Both supporters of the show, by the way. Appreciate y'all for coming in and hanging out with me. So you could be anywhere in the world, but you choose to be here, which is great. We got a cool little interview later on. And then I got, but before that, we'll get into some hip-hop news that isn't about dumb-ish. And we'll talk about some things that, you might not hear too much about. I don't know. I'm not saying anywhere specific, but other places that do talk about dumb-ish. So we don't do that here. So, yeah. So share the link. Give us a thumbs up. You're watching on YouTube. You see that we are only on YouTube now, as I promised you, but I'm still spreading the link everywhere else to bring people into the YouTube ecosystem. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. 1,000 subscribers. All organic. No funny business. No buying bots and things like that. So, we're trying to do it the old-fashioned way. So let's get the show on the road. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's do the intro. Oh, well, I'll tell you who well, you see it there, but I'll talk about it. Let's go. Let's start this up. Hip-hop news that isn't about dumb shit. Easy, because obviously I take 2 weeks off and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Sorry about that. Let's go. That's also wrong. If you're watching on the replay, look. If you're watching on the live stream, you know me. You know this is fine. It'll be fine in a second. If you're watching on the replay, it's not normally like this. But it looks good. It looks dope. I got some dope things. Features that y'all don't even, that was like a sneak peek. Like we haven't even seen that segment here yet. So let's do this for real. Is that all right? God dang.
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one.
The thing about hip hop today is it's smart. It's insightful. The way that they can communicate a complex message in a very short space is remarkable. And a lot of these kids, they're not going to be reading the New York Times. That's not how they're getting their information.
My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Hip-hop culture is more than music.
Peace to you and speak the truth. Show 'em what peace can do in their reach for you.
My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Rap is something you do. Hip-hop is something you live.
So hip-hop didn't invent anything, but hip-hop reinvented everything.
This is Baby Girl Faces, and this episode is brought to you by
Word up. Once again, peace and love to everyone who's showing support and helping keep the lights on over here through Patreon for the most part. A couple people on the Substack newsletter as well. So just thanks to y'all, man. Y'all already know. It's super important. Again, some names I haven't gotten to update it yet, and it's like the most, everyone wants to hear their name on the radio. I appreciate you. But shouts to Jamie, Austin, Sarah, and Dr. Elliot Gann, who's a supporter and been on the show, and we're going to get him here again. But people showing some love, and of course, if I haven't, I don't think Kath and Morgan is on that list. Patrick, Chris J, Adam K. We got a lot of supporters coming in, and I love it and I appreciate it. And we're going to update that stupid graphic. As you know, I'm still a one-man band for the most part, but we keep getting these supporters, we keep getting these numbers up. Might get a little assistance to this, and then we'll be able to do it a little bit bigger, better, stronger, faster, longer, harder. So yeah, so that's that. As you know, as I see on the banner there, we're interviewing. I have an interview tonight. I pre-recorded, so I'll be just playing it, but it was a good one. I did it earlier today. Kings of the Garden, the New York Knicks and their city. Adam Criblez will be our guest tonight. Now, this book is really interesting. It covers a gamut of information, including the sort of intersection of the New York Knicks and NBA basketball in the early 70s to mid 70s to early 80s is kind of the arc that the book covers. New York City, what was happening in and around New York City. You talk about like the socioeconomic conditions that were happening out in New York City and the birth of hip hop. So it's a time that we often speak of when we talk about the birth of hip hop. And it's an amazing look. It's a lens. It's a good lens with which to look at the birth of hip hop, the surrounding city, what was happening in New York City that led to hip hop, and also how it paralleled in a lot of ways NBA basketball, as the New York Knicks, of course, won their championship in 1973, and then almost very quickly after that fell off, and then to this day haven't quite recovered until maybe like last year and this year when we had a really, really, really good run. Obviously, we've had some flashpoints over the years, but it's a good book, Kings of the Garden, the New York Knicks and their city. And it's good. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about that sort of Venn diagram where hip hop, New York City, and NBA basketball all kind of came together in an interesting way. So good conversation to be had there. In the meantime, in between time, as we like to start off these shows with a little segment that I like to call Hip Hop News That Isn't About Dumb Shit. So I don't remember to take that thing off. So what we do here is we often talk about some of the things that I've already sent out on a newsletter that I send out for free. It's a newsletter that you can get at mannyfaces.substack.com. It's a free subscription there, although you can donate to the cause there as well. But this is an interesting newsletter because, and shout out to Randy Swigum, who was a guest on this show. I didn't ask him permission to do this, but he wrote me a really great comment about the newsletter, just saying how amazing it is and how informative and valuable it is. And I appreciate that. And it's a newsletter that we put together, that me put together to showcase sort of all of the things that are happening that I can come across in hip hop. That again, when I say aren't about dumb-ish, it's just not the gossipy stuff and who released an album or people are going to discuss new releases and things that happen and meme social media stuff. Now we talk about like some of the things that are happening in the intersections of hip hop in different areas like education and mental health therapy and politics and activism or business and entrepreneurship. Cool intersections. If you know this show, you already know. If you're new, you have to look back at who we talk to. We talk to people who are using hip hop and AI and technology, what that looks like. Again, educators and academics, mental health professionals, hip hop theater, hip hop orchestral musicians, like those intersections are what we kind of look at. So those stories are the things that I try to keep an ear and eye out for and curate them, because if you subscribe to most or pay attention to most like hip hop media, quote unquote hip hop media, literally 98.9% of it is just about music and releases and whatever the thing that might be happening. So you get all that everywhere else. Here's pretty much the only place you can get some of this. So it's a newsletter that comes out. It's whenever I can. I'll obviously hear a couple of recent examples of this show and what we talked about. Shouts to the inimitable Dr. Gian Jones about occupational therapy. So here's someone using hip hop in hospital settings, in therapy settings, getting people back after physical trauma. Brilliant conversation. Once again, Darrell Booker from Microsoft. He heads the what's it called? The tech accelerator for nonprofits, for African American nonprofits. Anyway, he's a racial equity tech lead, does a hell of a lot of work connecting communities that are in need of technology and technology solutions, particularly through nonprofit organizations. He's doing work with the Hip Hop Museum in New York. You know, you're not going to hear him talk. You're not going to hear him on Drink Champs. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen. Drink Champs is great. You're going to find what you're going to find there. We have him here, and it was a great conversation. So sometimes in the newsletter, I'll remind folks of some episodes they might have missed. A few stories that we covered. Like I say, I want to make sure that we put this stuff out. In case you haven't seen the newsletter, you should. Real quick, just a couple things. Shouts to my man, real quick, from New York City, by the way. Real quick, the scathing Rolling Stone expose on Diddy. Rolling Stone did a entire expose on Diddy, and I remember I made a comment the other day. I said, just try to balance the ecosystem. We absolutely need this story out. We unfortunately have seen the fall of Sean Combs. We need this information out. We need to, make people feel comfortable about telling their truths and telling their trauma and believing women and all the things that we need to do. So that story has to be out there. I don't like sometimes when we unbalanced in an unbalanced way, we see so many negative stories about hip hop, so many negative stories about people who might be associated with hip hop, or even in such a joke. It's not a joke, but like it'll be like rapper, arrested for murder, and like it's like some guy like B Squeezy from some small town in the middle of somewhere. And I'm like, but rapper, like, and then you look into it, and he's like, he got like a song on YouTube, and I'm like, that's not a rapper though. But like, if you don't put rapper on your whatever, when you fill your tax returns, that's a rapper, and that's when you can call yourself a rapper. If you just work at Wendy's, but you got a song on SoundCloud, you're not a rapper, but you will see that happen in media. So that being said, the Diddy story is important. The Rolling Stone expose is incredibly troubling and upsetting. At the same time, remember those who aren't part of the culture. They're not familiar with all of us. They don't know the good stuff that hip hop can do. They're going to look at this and say, yeah, here we go again. This is just another, example of hip hop. So while we need to get that story out there, please be sure to do your part to also share positive stories of hip hop, positive stories of the music and culture at the same time. Just to make sure that the balance is right. That all being said, I'm being preachy early, but that story is out there. We linked to it if you hadn't checked it. Some stories about Vince Staples. Vince Staples just released an album. I think he's a fascinating character. You don't probably see enough about him. You don't hear enough about him. He's had a TV show on Netflix, so he's gone from like the music world to the television world. The show has just been renewed for a second season. I watched the first season, and I oh jeez. What's happening here? And I enjoyed it, and I thought it was really interesting, and I thought we should share that news because again, these are things you don't often hear about when you just stay tuned to the social media. So the Vince Staples show will be renewed. It's a good show. Anyone see that? Anyone in the comments? Y'all watch the Vince Staples show? Oh my goodness. What up, Chosen Hip Hop in the building. Of course, a former guest on here, Prism was in the building on a former episode, doing good work over there. So we talked about Vince Staples. Also, what's this one? This is a story about a man named Brady. So this was Sinking Ink, which was a show that's happening at the Apollo Theater in New York. So it's a play. I wouldn't say a musical, but it's a play that's happening. So again, hip hop theater. We like to make sure we point out. Andrew Wang was happy about this one. Andrew Wang, a good supporter of the show, but also a musician, music teacher. I already saw it, but he pointed it out to me. He was like, Bob James, Tiny Desk concert. Now, of course, some of y'all might not be like, this guy's not hip hop. What are you talking about? Obviously, you don't know anything about hip hop, so you need to learn. But Bob James, a highly talented and renowned musician who's had several of his compositions sampled for simply iconic hip hop pieces. And he did a Tiny Desk concert, and it was super dope. Shouts to Tiny Desk, NPR Tiny Desk. I really enjoy the stuff they do. So that was really cool. once again, our good friend Andrew Wang, who is a fierce advocate, runs the Yonkers Lost City of Hip Hop Facebook page. Really works to amplify Yonkers as a a hotbed of hip hop activity in the days, and as he should, as I do often for Long Island. Shouts to Long Island, Strong Island, where I used to rest. Shouts to Raphael Travis, of course, from Long Island. DMX Estate struck a new partnership to ensure his music lives on. So there's some brewing there, and we like to make sure that we keep our we keep giving our icons and their flowers even after they're gone. And so that was interesting. Another musical, which I thought was interesting. This one's interesting. It's a hip hop musical, right? About a lesser known part of the Underground Railroad, which is a story that I hadn't heard about, which was interesting. And I talked about this a while back when it was first sort of like announced. And then this was like a review. So we have a review of this musical. And now the lesser known part of the Underground Railroad was that there was part of the Underground Railroad that went north, and we hear about that a lot, but also part that went south and went to Mexico. And so I thought that was an interesting story. These folks are musicians and playwrights, and they've come together, they're rappers, and they put this interesting what do you call it? Just a musical together. I think it is in. They paywalled me now, so I don't know where it's at. Okay, here we go. Let's put it back on. I forget where they are. DC, maybe? Yeah, I think they're in DC. So it's a really good is it called Mexodus? I think it's called Mexodus, which is, pretty clever. And so these guys put on the show about this. So it's a history lesson. Obviously, it's done with hip hop. It's done put together. I thought it was an interesting combination. And if you're in DC and you know about it, let me know if you went to go see it. A couple of other things that came up. I'll give you, and then some. Oh, and then the other thing I, of course, let you know about is upcoming conferences, interdisciplinary hip hop events, like things that are happening across the line. So if you, again, this is all in the newsletter. So if you haven't gotten the newsletter, and if you have got the newsletter, forgive me for running through things you already know about. But sign up to the newsletter, man. This is all the good information that you can find almost every other week. I'm like at a two weeks clip now, and I'll explain a couple of those. I'll give you information about a couple of those episodes in a minute. Just want to check in on y'all in the comments. Strong Island, yes, of course. Jazzy Jeff was rocking with right, indeed. And then watch the whole series. Raphael says the whole Vince Staples show. It was a good show. Vince Staples. It's someone said it's like a mixture of what I hear a lot. The Larry David show and Atlanta. Right? So like that's the vibe if you haven't seen the Vince Staples show, but picked up for a second season, so good for him. Here's one thing that's happening in the next 2 weeks. It goes a little something like this. One of the greatest gifts that hip hop gave us is rap. Well, yes, but I mean also
DJs,
of course, but
breakers, graffiti artists, beatboxers.
Yes. I mean more than just the arts.
Rap's next.
No, hip hop based education.
Oh, yeah. Wait, what?
I'm Manny Faces, and this is hip hop news that isn't about dumb shit. June 22nd, 2024, Teachers College, New York City. The Hip-Hop Ed Conference will bring together a plethora of academics and educators and activists who are using the power of hip-hop music and culture to improve the educational lives of students from all walks of life, but most importantly, in communities that have been hindered by racial and economic injustice. Now, to the uninitiated, hip-hop and education together might sound like a strange concept, but if you're in the education space or anything even closely related, I guarantee you this conference will change your entire perspective. So register now. Details are in the video description or on Instagram at Hip-Hop Ed. And for more like this, tune into Hip Hop Can Save America, the live stream show, every Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, hiphopcansaveamerica.com/watch. Hey, that's us. That's us here. So yeah, the Hip Hop Ed Conference is happening in New York City on June 22nd, Saturday. It's an all-day event. Registration is available. You can go to the best way to go is to Instagram/Hip Hop Ed and catch that if you're in New York City or in surrounding areas, or if you want to travel. It's a really good place if you're in the education space. And as I often say, like I don't want to make it look like we're just all about educators and academics here. We're not all like hoity-toity with our noses in the air. Not that hip hop educators are that, but I don't want to scare people away. You have to know that hip hop conferences, hip hop education conferences are a lot different than like lecture hall academic, sitting in a, lecture, kind of thing. It's fun, it's exciting, it's brilliant, it's entertaining, but it's also a place that you want to be if you're an educator, an activist, if you're anyone who is in charge, who's been charged with the protection, the young people. Like if you're a counselor, if you work at a camp, if you work at a daycare, if you're work at a community center, if you work at a nonprofit that deals with youth, these are great places where smart people doing brilliant things all come together and say, here's how we can use hip hop music and culture to uplift our society, in particular with young people in education. So also if you're an artist, teaching artists, like teaching artists are a thing, and these conferences are a great place to find that out. So if you're not aware of it, do check out the Hip Hop Ed Conference happening in New York. Again, you'll get all of this information and more if you just sign up for the newsletter. It's mannyfaces.substack.com. It's free. It's chock full of things. There was a Hip Hop for Peace concert in New York City, a rallying call for a permanent ceasefire and an end to civilian death in Palestine, Congo, and Sudan. That just happened over the weekend in New York City. Rebel Diaz, Dead Prez, a bunch of other folks were involved in that. Super dope. June 4th, which is tomorrow, there's a show with Justin Bua, hip hop art, the beat of urban art. So art, present, what do you call it? Exhibitions. June 15th up in Yonkers, there's a battle of the boroughs, break-in battle. Someone was talking the other day. I was on Reddit. By the way, if you're on Reddit, we have a subreddit. It's Reddit, subreddit hip hop culture. That's ours. That we have that now. And so you want to go there and we post stories like this. So if you don't want to wait for the newsletter and be like, Manny, give me some good, fresh new stuff, it's there. So Reddit's a great place. And someone was there talking about like, I really miss the other elements of hip hop. And this is something we got to fight back against, because the impression is that the other elements, breaking or DJing, even turntablism, or even beatboxing, if you consider that, which obviously should be considered an artistic element of hip hop. Like these things don't exist anymore. They don't exist in droves, and they do. And I was saying, well, I don't know, like breaking, forget the fact that it's going to be in the Olympics. You can remember the fact, but forget the fact. Like that's controversial for a whole different other reason. We're going to investigate that one day soon. But like Red Bull has events all the time. Freestyle Sessions is an organization that had a 2-day, I think they do it every year. It's at least a 2-day weekend long event. I went to the one last year in San Jose, California. It was like a 2-day thing with battles, and you have age groups, you have kids, and you have OGs, and like different groups, like group battles and stuff. Like all the, like it was awesome. It was blowing my mind, like how much like breaking was represented at this one weekend thing. Even with Graph, like I just gave you, like there's usually a art exhibit. The Museum of Graffiti in Miami had a pop-up right here in Atlanta last weekend. So it's not that these things don't exist, and I don't want people to think that like, oh, the things I loved about hip hop, like the artistic, the breaking, the graffiti, the turntable, all this stuff, the DMC turntable championships happen every year. Like all these things exist, so despite some theories that hip hop is truly dead by some of the bigger voices in the culture, far from the truth. So I do what I can to bring these things to you. And just again, to that point, New York City area, Yonkers, Battle of the Boroughs is having a breaking battle. Like these things are happening in your neighborhoods. Again, June 22nd, a hip hop conference, the Hip Hop Ed Conference at Teachers College in New York City. I'll be there actually. So if you're there and you're in this, a lot of times we're all in the same, we all in the same circles. Say hi to me. I'm not presenting or anything. I'm just kind of attending to, do my part to keep abreast of all the things happening in the hip hop education space. Andrew Wang in the chat, they're going to be doing the pre-conference So that's pretty dope. So they'll be there. Shouts to Bob Knutson. What up, Bob? That's interesting. Yeah, I don't have it set up, the cookie shop thing, like with the story. Maybe we'll do it after the interview, and then we'll do a, what's on your hip hop mind recap, and then maybe I'll take some thoughts on that. It's not that long an interview, so let's Bob Knutson is bringing up the idea of, and Bob, I got to push back on your comment, by the way. I get what you're trying to, I get what you're saying, and it's fair, but I think that's giving too much credit to them than I think they deserve. But that's just me. Like I said, this is a discussion we could have. Bob Knutson's talking about the hip hop cookie shop. Where do I have it? I don't know if I have it like right here. There's a cookie shop. I don't want to get into this yet. There's a cookie shop. My internet is not cooperating, fellas. There's a shop called what's it called? Cookie Crunch. I don't know. All right, look, I'm just gonna do it. Hold on, 1 second. All right, so this is what Bob was talking about. New hip hop cookie shop downtown stirs. That wasn't ready. I don't know if it's gonna play the sound. Let me know if y'all can hear this.
Shop is creating a buzz, but not in a good way.
Let me know if y'all heard that.
Jay is one of the investors in Cookie Plug.
Let me know if you hear the audio. So this cookie shop in where is this place? Indianapolis. All right. Okay, all right. I'll let good. You can hear it. All right, then let's watch it together, folks. Let's find out about this this cookie shop, and let me hear what y'all have to say about this.
Cookie shop is creating a buzz, but not in a good way. iTomate's Kat Sandoval takes us into this cookie shop and takes a deep dive and tells us why the business is in hot water.
Cookie Plug's opening week was anything but sweet, with some Hoosiers calling their marketing strategy racist or misappropriating Black culture.
Those comments are hurtful, so I'm not even watching it.
Doreen Waters and her husband Michael opened up a cookie shop on Mass Avenue. It's a California franchise.
Hold on, just I'm gonna commentate as we go. She says those comments are so hurtful. I'm not even listening to them. Okay, so just keep that in mind, Bob. Hold on.
And Michael opened up appropriating Black culture.
Those comments are hurtful, so I'm not even watching it.
Doreen Waters and her husband Michael opened up a cookie shop on Mass Avenue. It's a California franchise called Cookie Plug. It has graffiti on the walls, hip-hop references, and phrases and slang usually associated with drugs.
Me selling cookies, that's all we're doing.
But the details are there, from boxes with money and references like, "Thank you for supporting your neighborhood dough dealer," cookies called Fatties, and a drink called Purple Drink.
I mean, I grew up during this time, and I never have done drugs. Purple Drink is just that. It's a purple drink. It's lemonade.
But for people who grew up with hip-hop culture...
Oh, Doreen, it's called Purple Drank. First of all, they're not even the reporter's not getting it right. You saw the picture. It's called Purple Drank, not Purple Drink. Anyway.
Purple Drink. It's lemonade.
But for people who grew up with hip-hop culture, Purple Drink was a reference to a deadly drug mix some rappers would drink.
When the franchisee is not aware of what these what the terminology is dealing with, and to be honest, tropes that are used as gimmicks to sell people lemonade and sell children lemonade, that is absolutely a problem.
Foray Phillips is speaking up because hip-hop is synonymous with Black people and culture. He wants the company to do better, maybe get rid of references to drugs.
Why is the entire theme of the organization based off of drug references and terminology? You're painting a picture that hip hop and drugs are synonymous, which is not the truth.
The franchise owner, Eric Martinez.
Ooh, I couldn't have said that part better myself. I need to get this brother on the show.
Picture that hip hop and drugs are synonymous, which is not the truth.
The franchise owner, Eric Martinez, says it's really about freedom of expression.
Well, I think that's exactly my point, right? Like, you can be a proud American and you can love hip hop and you can love cookies and you can love graffiti, right? Like, you don't have to be in a box.
He makes references to 50 Cent.
And he said, America's got a thing for this gangster-ish. And they do, right? Like, that's what they like. So that's why.
Oh, yeah, they do.
When I started the cookie, I was like, well, let's make a cookie shop gangster. That's really all it is.
Hip-hop legend LL Cool J is one of the investors in Cookie Plug and plans to open 30 shops of his own. Customers I spoke to today don't seem to have a problem.
Hold on. Just so we know, because we'd like to hold people accountable here.
That's really all it is.
Hip-hop legend LL Cool J is one of the investors in Cookie Plug.
Ooh, interesting tidbit.
And plans to open 30 shops of his own. Customers I spoke to today don't seem to have a problem.
It looks good so far. I haven't tasted anything yet, so once I get there, then, I'll probably be back if they're good enough, and I'll turn them on to other coworkers and other people.
There is a steady influx of diverse customers willing to try the new cookie shop, and the owner told us that since they've opened, one customer said they were offended. I'm iTeam8's Kat Sandoval, Wish TV, wishtv.com, or follow us on Facebook for updates.
We'll stay with iTeam8 tonight.
All right. Well, there you go. So, and shouts to you, Bob. I hear your comment. Having only read the story, maybe some important context was lost, and that's fine. That makes sense. I get it. It's interesting, and what gets me is like, hey, folks who opened this shop with graffiti on the wall and clear references to hip hop. The owner who's like, yeah, I know about 50 Cent. I know about graffiti. I know about all of these things. Hey, we're just trying to tell you that this is a really skewed outlook, and some people could be offended by it. It actually paints hip hop in a negative light, and maybe you should listen to some of the controversy or some of the critique. And they're like, nah, man, we just selling cookies. What's the big deal? And the lady's like, that hurts me so much. I don't even want to listen to it. So yeah, so much for, LL Cool J, an investor in the Cookie Plug. How interesting. Interesting. Anyway, so there you go. That's the one of the things that was on my hip hop mind. And some others as well. So we'll do the interview, then we'll come back and we'll talk about anything else that might be on your hip hop mind. I know Andrew was talking about actually a book he's putting together. And then what else might be on my hip hop mind? I may have a little bit of book news, but I'm not going to tell y'all tonight. But stay tuned. And then we'll talk about. I actually put the comment out to the Facebook peoples. Shouts if you're watching. Well, you can only watch it on YouTube, but if you came over from Facebook, make sure hey everyone, real quick, thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and give this a share real quick. Share it to your Facebook. Let people jump in and say, oh man, he's doing a really cool thing about all the great things about hip hop. You should pay attention. That'd be great. I'd appreciate it. And yeah, once again, sign up for the free newsletter, mannyfaces.substack.com. And if you can, and shouts again to the supporters that are in the building. I think we got Raphael, we got Andrew. I don't know who else might be here, but you can support this effort. Now, I am working diligently in the background to find ways to make this a real deal thing. We can get this bigger, better, faster, stronger, harder, longer, without using shoes from hymns. Hey, yo. So, but until those things happen, I'm talking about big things, grants or whatever. I'm trying to keep away from like corporate influence. So it may take a while, but obviously if you could put in, $5 a month, $10 a month, I've gotten some perks there. We have some discounts on merch and a couple of freebies and such. If you're a paid Patreon, I owe y'all a free song that's coming up this week. Not from me, not my song. I'm just going to give you a song that you normally have to pay for. That's from someone that y'all like. But I'm going to give it to you for free. So that's going to happen. Anyway, let's go back. As I promised you, this is going to be a good talk. Kings of the Garden, the New York Knicks and their city. I got word about this book earlier this year. I'm a huge Knicks fan, as y'all probably know. We had an amazing season this year. A lot of teams, when they lose at the end of the season, they're like, we had a good season. It was good, though. We had a good season. We really did. And I don't think anyone who's a Knicks fan can complain about this season's run. Just ravaged by freak injuries and made a run anyway. Impressive. You're into basketball at all, you know that the New York Knicks were a force to be reckoned with this year. So that being said, when I heard about this book, I'm like, oh, the history of the Knicks, that's cool. New York City, I covered New York City hip hop for, 15 years, the New York Hip Hop Report, Birthplace Magazine. So, but I love that they tied it together. So the author, Adam Criblez, made a lot of references throughout the book to hip hop bubbling up at the same time that the Knicks were kind of having their heyday, late 60s, early 70s. And then as it fell off, and then some parallels happening between New York City's socioeconomic conditions, the rise of hip hop, the changing of the NBA. It's a great book. If you like any of those three things, you're going to like it. And if you like all of those three things, then you're going to really love it. So why don't I, without further ado, again, this is not a live interview. I did it earlier today. So I'll sit in the chat room with y'all and we could all talk about it together as it happens. And here it goes. This is my talk with author Adam J. Criblez, the author of Kings of the Garden, the New York Knicks and Their City. Let's go. Adam Criblez, how are you, sir? Thank you for joining me.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. And thank you. We've been trying to do this for quite some time. I appreciate your patience. I'm a slow reader, so that's really what it is. I blame it on my schedule, but it's not. Kings of the Garden, the New York Knicks and Their City, your latest tome that you've released into the world. I've dressed in my finest Knick regalia.
I saw that.
Had to do it.
I've got Rucker Park, so I'm close.
I like it. And this is hey, listen, it's all tied in, right?
That's right.
And that's why we're here talking about it. Of course, this is Hip Hop Can Save America, not Basketball Can Save America, although somebody wrote a book, something like that. Anyway, the point is, Kings of the Garden, the New York Knicks and Their City is the book, but the book talks very much about the city when the Knicks were, I guess, I don't want to say heyday, but certainly if you look at, championships, it was a heyday, and we haven't quite had a full heyday yet. So anyway, I want to talk about this book. Thank you for coming on the show. Please give a quick introduction, how you present yourself to the world, besides author of this book, if you will.
Sure. So I'm a history professor at Southeast Missouri State University, and I do a lot of work with student athletes and work with sports and the community. And so that was really a big impetus for me starting into sport history. So it's not what I went to school for. I do have a PhD in history, but it was not an emphasis in sports. Right. And so I got interested in sports and found that sports is kind of a way to learn a lot about a lot of different parts of history.
That is true. It's something that ties a lot of people together. It ties, as we know, like locale and all the things associated with. You're not you're not from New York?
No. So I'm actually from Ohio. I grew up in the suburban Midwest. I love New York for the same reasons that a lot of people I think from the Midwest did. It's, the exotic big city, and, you visit when you're a kid and it's just overwhelming and huge. And when I was a kid, it was, the Patrick Ewing led Knicks, and they were just so cool and fun. And so that, despite not growing up in New York City, I certainly was a big Knicks guy early on.
Attracted to that allure. So you were a basketball fan in general, I would imagine. And then, kind of the Knicks were, because back then, I tell people all the time, we would have our city teams and we would rock. But then there was sort of a time when people would just kind of pick the team or pick the player that they want. How many people are Kobe fans and therefore Laker fans that didn't grow up anywhere near LA? You know what I mean? So there was that kind of thing where you could adopt sort of, other cities, other players, other teams as sort of having an allegiance to.
Yeah, totally. And again, growing up in Central Ohio, the Cavs were not good at the time when I was younger, and then they were, towards, when I got to be a little older. Yep. But then, the Knicks of, Ewing and Starks and Oakley and Mason, they just were this gritty, hard-nosed team that was, they were easy to love or easy to hate. And so, I was a big basketball guy growing up, and so they were definitely a team that I enjoyed watching.
That was my squad. That was my time. When I really got really fully, invested and became a diehard, Knicks fan till the day I die. What's great about this book and why we're really interested in it here is because of the tie-in with the city, the tie-in with the time frame. And you go back to basically late 60s, early 70s, how the Knicks were coming into their championship years at that point, some of the great names that we all know, the Clydes and all that. And then you also parallel with it what's happening from a historical perspective, from a sociological perspective in New York City And those things, there's like a three-way Venn diagram of basketball, socioeconomics, and then they blend, and all these things happen, including hip hop, and it emerges at the same time. And I think you'll tell me more, but like from the same like DNA, right? From the same dust, cosmic dust, you see hip hop and you see the Knicks entering their heyday. Explain just real basically that kind of how, and you made the connection several times in the book. There's a graph writer right on the cover of the book. So you really recognize that there's this coming together of these cultures. Can you explain what you saw and how that sparked for you?
Absolutely. So the thing that really sparked for me actually in the very beginning was that in 1979, the Knicks become the NBA's first all-black team. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And, I go into more about the issues with race in the book around that time, but that also this is a time when I started to think about, like, isn't this when kind of hip hop is coming out of the South Bronx around the same time? And so I was like, well, that's gotta be something more than coincidental that, 73 kind of marks the beginning of hip, however you want to designate that, but like that's coming out at the same time. I was very much influenced by a book called Heaven is a Playground that looks at like old school. It was early like blacktop basketball, and I was like, again, not coincidental that basketball being played on blacktop. Kids are, pretending to be the Knicks, and meanwhile somebody's hooking their turntable up into the light pole, and they're having their dance parties at the basketball courts where this is being played. Like this is too close to just be coincidental. And then of course, like I said, with the Knicks being, the Clyde Fraziers, the Rolls Royce backcourt, like they were the epitome of cool. And then the
styling
Knicks,
and profiling.
Totally, yeah. And so like that really got me. And as I started to dig more, like the connections, like you said, that Venn diagram just started to remind me over and over again how closely connected like basketball and hip hop and just the socioeconomics in New York City at the time, how it was all just kind of interrelated.
Yeah, we talk about obviously here and historically in Hip Hop 50, we've heard all these, as you say, like the designate, however you want to kind of, the universally kind of accepted birthday and, birth time. But obviously it happened over the period of a bunch of years. And obviously it also ties in with, decades and centuries of African diasporic influences coming all, again, coalescing in New York. What was, from your perspective, what were some of those socioeconomic conditions that created obviously hip hop, but also that affected or influenced the basketball world? It's not the basketball world we know today. If you watch like the Showtime, the Lakers, documentary, how the NBA wasn't quite like the NBA that we know of today. It was a little bit more grittier and still trying to find its footing, competing with the ABA at the time. What was the socioeconomics happening in New York City that, again, you picked up on that created that helped birth the hip hop culture, and how was the basketball scene, particularly in New York, affected by that as well?
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos for using African diasporic. If I could get my students to understand what that meant, I would be a much better professor.
Listen, I've had a long history of, my dad was a sociologist. I knew what gentrification meant when I was 8. So, you know what I mean? I've been doing this for a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah. So socioeconomically, like this was a rough time in New York City. So probably the most well-known example of this is President Ford visited in the mid-70s, and he went into the South Bronx and just saw the devastation. And New York City essentially applied for a bailout. Like they were going to go bankrupt unless the national government helped them out. And Ford said no. And so splashed across the headlines was the phrase "Ford to city, drop dead." And that was kind of the perspective that many New Yorkers had, is that, for decades, New York had been kind of this, the place in the United States. And now they didn't seem important. And more often the residents felt like they themselves were insignificant. And so when you have that combination of not only were times actually tough because socioeconomically you had extreme poverty, especially in some of the areas in the South Bronx, but you also had this perception that like the government doesn't care, the national government doesn't care, the local government doesn't care. And again, given the racial climate at the time, a lot of white folks in New York City didn't care. Right. And so it's this sense of, I always think of the well-known often sampled bit from the song The Message is, don't push me because I'm close to the edge. Like there was a lot of that going on in New York City in the mid 70s. And so that that sense of desperation and desolation, I think really was the only reason that hip hop emerged. It's one of those things like out of the ashes came this genre that, like you said, had been really marinating for a very long time. And you can mark the jazz and rockabilly, I mean, all the influences in early hip hop, but like that it required that level of desolation and destitution for it really to catch on and catch fire how it did.
Yeah. How did so at the same time, what's happening in basketball as a as a league, and then specifically like the Knicks and how that kind of synergy was developing?
Yeah. So as a league, the NBA in the 1970s was not the NBA of the 80s. Right. So actually, my book previous to Kings of the Garden was one that looked at the NBA in the 1970s. Right. And it was this forgotten decade in many ways. Like in the 1960s, you have Bill Russell and the Celtics and that dynasty. And then in 1980, there's this perception that Larry Bird and Magic Johnson arrived and saved the NBA. Like the number of times that I've heard they saved the NBA. But in the 1970s, there was the rivalry with the ABA. They were fighting over the best players. And part of that was statistically, the best player in the NBA in the 1970s was clearly Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. However, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was an African-American, a black Muslim who frankly didn't trust the media. And so the media didn't write nice things about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Right. And so when your biggest star is someone who the media doesn't want to interview and doesn't want to be interviewed by the media, there's that crisis that at the same time, salaries are skyrocketing. The free agency arrives in the NBA in 1976. And so now you have all of a sudden players who are making, relatable salaries to now making what were considered exorbitant salaries. And, tied into that, it's the same time as drug use is rising particularly among wealthier Americans that can afford cocaine and heroin and those sorts of things. And so we see, a commonly used phrase was that no one wanted to see a game played by a bunch of overpaid drug-using African Americans. And so that was what the NBA was facing by the mid to late 70s. And the Knicks were maybe the poster children of that. They had some of the most well-known drug users in the league. They were paying superstar prices and barely making the playoffs if they made them at all. Yeah. And for many New Yorkers, they look back to those glory days of 1970 to 73 and, wondered if they were ever going to be good again. Which is something that, frankly, until about 6 months ago, I think a lot of New York Knicks fans had that same question. But in the 70s, it was a tough time for the NBA and particularly for the Knicks.
How was the city changing over those times? You mentioned Rucker Park, you got the shirt on. How was the basketball culture sort of paralleling the NBA's culture or the rise and fall of the Knicks? What was happening here? Because I know, we know Rucker Park, we know the cage. Like, there's things in New York City that people outside of New York City might not know, that there are these like iconic spots and cultures and events every year. Where did all that start to develop?
So it started in the 70s. Yeah. There were Rucker Park tournaments previously, but they really became phenomenons in the 70s. And really like Rutgers almost cheating, right? So you weren't just going to pick up a ball and lace on some sneakers and go play Rucker like that. Right. You just weren't going to, or the cage. There were courts all over the city. So basketball was always being played, but there became that sense of, man, if you could make it to Rucker, that was almost like the NBA for a lot of people. Is it the stories that you hear from guys like Herman Helicopter Nolings and there was one story that, he went up for a shot, a guy went up to block it, came down and went to jump again, and Nolings was still in the air. Like, it's just this insane, insane stories that nobody, that's part of the beauty of it too, is that nobody had their cell phone where they could just, record it.
It's
so
lore.
you get this word of mouth lore.
It's folklore, yeah.
And then you get performances like, maybe the most well-known Rucker performance of all time, Julius Erving comes out and Dr. J puts on a show, or Wilt Chamberlain comes out, but you get this mixing of cultures where you get this elite NBA player that everybody knows, and then like these guys that are local heroes in Harlem or Greenwich or wherever that come out and like can hold their own or play with. And it's this combination of local celebrity, national celebrity. And I mean, the street ball scene was just amazing in the 70s. And so it reaches a peak in the 70s in some ways, because then once you get those guys that start to get those big contracts, you get a $1 million contract, but if you get hurt, that contract goes away.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to go play Rucker against some semi-pros and risk a knee injury. So like the superstar NBA players going and playing legit in Rucker kind of ends by the early 80s. Like Tiny Archibald is one of the last ones, and he's a New Yorker. But by the early 80s, like that era where you have this blending of pro and amateur and semi-pro or whatever, it kind of comes to a close. So in a lot of ways, the 70s are the golden age of that era of Rucker.
Yeah, that window that where the streets still had sway, or back and forth. So 80s, and your book kind of goes into the 80s, right? That's kind of where it ends, but it looks at that period. You mentioned like the NBA of the 70s wasn't the NBA of the 80s. The parallels to hip hop, hip hop now 79, Rapper's Delight. Now there's an industry brewing and blossoming. What do you see there in those parallels as the 80s, the overdoing everything 80s came into play, and just, everything started going to 100. Rap and hip hop and the culture and music and TV and music videos and the NBA and Mars Blackman and the Jordan and, tell me everything.
Yeah. So the NBA and hip hop and New York City all kind of ran in parallel. So in the early 80s, New York City kind of gets its finances under order. They try to clean up Times Square, because Times Square is, at the time kind of a den of inequity. And so like there's that effort. New York, because like the We Heart New York shirts and motto kind of comes into fashion. But in terms of the NBA and hip hop, like both really exploded and went from somewhat localized to globally important. And so that's where you get, like, if you want to say that Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan saved the NBA, it's that they brought it global and put zeros at the end of that, the revenue stream that didn't exist. And at the same time, hip hop goes from being like something that people did in the South Bronx to becoming a global phenomenon. And I love some of the quotes I use in the book are like, people when they start to have hip hop albums recorded, they're like, I didn't know you could do hip hop on an album. Like, what are you talking? Like, it's something you do on a turntable. You have to go live and experience it. And so the sense that you could make a
Flash,
living,
the Grandmaster Flash,
one
of the ones that had that quote.
But like that you could make a living being a hip hop musician and make a good living in the same way that you could become a superstar. You could become incredibly transformationally wealthy by being an NBA player. Like, that's also from the early 80s. And so it's this sense of like, they both become like huge business. You get, again, the Mars Blackmans of the world. My favorite, though, you mentioned the music videos. To me, the quintessential is 1984, Curtis Blow's Basketball. And like the song is so perfect, mid 80s, like cotton candy hip hop, where it makes you feel good and you kind of bop around a little bit. And then the music video includes like a kung fu fight at a basketball game. And so like that to me epitomizes that sense of like basketball becoming mainstream, hip hop becoming mainstream. And it really, like, again, I enjoy the song Basketball by Curtis Blow, but it really doesn't say anything. It just talks about like how basketball is his favorite sport and like you slam dunk and alley oop. And so like that to me kind of is the quintessential mid 80s hip hop, like becoming mainstream jam.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. That is, I mean, it's etched in our heads, of course. What then, as you're looking into this whole thing overall, the trajectory, the city, again, the tie-in with the city, what's happening in New York at this time? Like, what's happening? You said they got their finance under control, but the Knicks are not necessarily the team until a little bit later. And I don't, like I said, the mellow days, I guess you'd say, the next time we had some hope. But what was happening in terms of the city and the team in this, like in the 80s, and where you kind of end the look in your book's trajectory.
Sure. So there was one element of like I don't know if you call it like a false spring or false hope, but the Knicks managed to sign / trade for Bernard King.
Yes.
And Bernard is and will always be a New York City legend. But it really boiled down to about the 18-month period in which he was the king of New York, right? And so there's an iconic photo of him wearing like a cape and a crown on his head. But he came in and he was the superstar that the Knicks had really looked for since the mid 70s, right? Since the early 70s. They'd had great players, but Bernard was generational. And
he came in what year? That was
83, I believe.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he came in, and one of my favorite players left. Michael Ray Richardson went to Golden State. Bernard King came into New York, and King put on a show. And especially like if you are able to like find any 1984 NBA playoffs, Knicks, Celtics, like this is the Celtics dynasty. This is Larry Bird, Kevin McHale. Right. These are those teams, and the Knicks took them to 7 games. And at one point, like it was basically, Bernard may have to score 70 to win. Well, he may score 70. And so he was electric. And probably most well known is that then that Christmas Day, 1984, he goes out and sets a Madison Square Garden record. And then 3 months later, absolutely demolished his knee. And so that spring of 84, there was a sense that, the New York City's doing better as a city. Again, right. Finances are in order. We're cleaning up the city. Right. And, the Mets are starting to be good. The Yankees kind of suck, but the Mets are good.
Right.
And so Bernard's going to lead us to the promised land. Right. And then he tears up his knee and, they get Patrick Ewing. And that kind of marks chronologically the end of the book is like this peak 84. Then they fall off, they get Ewing, and that's a different generation.
Yeah, fair enough. And then there was a lot of us who lived through that generation, similar ups and downs.
Yes, sir.
Of course, which is, the, I think it's I won't use the curse. I know in sports we like curses. I won't use that word, but it just seems to be the cycle, let's just say.
Yes.
Let's move, and you mentioned it before, and I'll come back to like if there's anything else that, you came up in this, came from doing this process and learned something or loved something about this whole thing. But moving forward now, we've gone past all this. You mentioned 6 months ago. It was a good year for the Knicks. Are you still a Knicks fan? Did you follow this year? Were you the last year or two, really? Because we've had it for about, the last 2 seasons, really. What do you feel about today and the Knicks in New York City? Are they kings of the Garden once again?
Yeah. I mean, talk about missed opportunity. Like in February, man, it was like everything's coming together. Yeah. Anunoby and Brunson and Randall together were dynamite. Yeah. And so it was that hope that, man, if they can get all 3 of them healthy by the playoffs, and I mean, they still made a heck of a run, but like that what if? And so now, I mean, and in no way am I back in my day, basketball was better. But it's a
hip hop show. Everyone says that about hip hop, so it's a common refrain, sir. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that like there's such uncertainty in the off season now. So it's can the Knicks bring it, or do they want to bring in a Giannis? Do they want to try to bring in a superstar, or do they double down with what they have? Are they able to lock up some of the guys that are significant parts of this team? Yeah. And it's like that with every NBA franchise, and it's which direction do they go? And in the past, if you look at Knicks history, it's been that they pursue LeBron, KD, whoever back to the 70s, which is something that surprised me when I was writing, is like they were trying to do the same thing, to get Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1975.
Right.
That they're doing now. But like I have a lot of hope as a Knicks fan, but also, like you said, that sense of like, okay, things are going really well. How's this going to turn?
Yep. I guess the question is, the run it back folk, like, hey, let's keep the team together, run it back, and or maybe get that one extra something and lose like what we can, but but I think generally speaking, all healthy as we were. Let's run it back. I think we'd be all right. So again, the whole trajectory of this, going past the time that you again chronologically ended the book into a new era, what's just your overall takeaway from the parallels of the Knicks, the city, and the cultures therein? What did you learn from doing this book? What did you like? What thoughts were validated, and maybe what's surprised you?
Yeah. So the thoughts that were validated, and this is something I knew because I've read a lot of really good books that have tried to do this, is that the connection between sports teams, local sports teams, and the fans and the city and the culture, it's inseparable. Like, the Knicks fans that are hip hop fans, obviously there's a lot of overlap in the 70s. And that, so I think I understood that there was a lot of connection to culture. One thing that did surprise me was when I went into this project, I did not expect it to be as much about hip hop as it is. And not that it's a hip hop book, but hip hop plays a pretty prominent role. I wanted to look at like the culture of New York City, but the more I looked at it, those connections to hip hop just kept coming up. So initially I had like a whole section about the rise of punk and that this is the peak era of disco is this era. And in fact, it was funny. There's a generational rift in some ways in that the players that I interviewed who would have been at the time in their 20s, early 30s, like they didn't listen to hip hop. They went to the disco club and like they bopped it out at Studio 54. Like they're not going to go, to the Bronx and listen to some, I don't know, apartment. Or park. Like they're just not going to do that.
Fair.
And so like I expected the players themselves to be more engaged in the hip hop scene, but it's really about like, and I should have known this, the kids that would have been teenagers in the 70s that come into the NBA in 1989, 1990, like that's the hip hop generation that arrives. I mean, that's he would have been, not quite at that age yet, but like the Allen Iverson generation, like they're raised on hip hop. Whereas, Bob McAdoo, who's 30 in this era, like he's not listening to hip hop. And like Bill Cartwright is listening to the Shondells. Like he's not listening to, like, and that's literally from the book. Like, he liked the music that he grew up on as a kid. So that kind of surprised me. I guess I expected more players to be engaged, but also more of the music scene in New York City to be relevant, but it really ended up kind of falling to the side. So there's not much about punk rock. There's not much about disco. It's really about how hip hop is emerging at the same time as these Knicks are undergoing these strains.
Yeah, that's interesting. And obviously I loved all the parallels. We loved all the connections to, to the things that we know from the history of hip hop, which we spend so much time with. Being a Knicks fan, knowing the references, knowing Rucker, knowing Robert Moses, and like all the kind of things that are happening in New York City. It's a great book and this is why I love intersections. Obviously the show is all about how hip hop can, be used to improve society in areas outside of entertainment, in the education space or in mental health therapy. But this intersection of sports, history, and hip hop, you could be a fan of any one of those three things and you'll get a lot out of this book. So I compliment you on doing that in a way that didn't seem contrived or like, we're going to stuff it into that box. So congrats on that. I wanted to say one thing about today's Knicks, because you mentioned, so now thinking the way I think you have about the city and what's happening, and in the 80s, the city's coming up. And so the team's coming up and we expect it all to come up together and then it doesn't. And then, the 90s happen and, and it's all flashy and it's all like, different. But something about New York City, which New York City residents would know, old New York City residents, old New York would testify to, is that, with gentrification, with, pandemic, with people moving in and moving out, the heartbeat of the city has changed. Okay. I'm a hip hop guy. I covered New York hip hop for 10 years. For a magazine, an online publication that I created. That scene that I covered for 10 years and, in the 2010s and, leading up to 2020, it doesn't exist anymore. A lot of things don't exist like they used to. But this team, because it reminded us of that 90s team, that Ewan, Oakley, Starks, that squad, it felt like we had a little bit of old New York back. And I think that's why a lot of us really, if you're diehard, you were diehard. But even the bandwagons, you can come back on because it felt like 90s again. It felt like, we went back to when New York was New York. And, again.
That's
So
right.
I think that's something that happened this year with this squad.
I would agree, 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that was driven by the fact that there wasn't this one super. I mean, Brunson is a superstar,
Sure.
but he wasn't crowned that before he came to
He wasn't
New York.
billed that way.
Exactly.
Right.
So I feel like there was that sense of this blue collar work ethic team of guys that Randall had so much negative had been said about him, and like him being able to pull some stuff together. And so I would agree. It very much, I hadn't thought about it, but it very much echoes that Ewing, Oakley, Starks, Mason kind of lunch pail identity for sure.
Sure. I mean, that's why Josh Hart, is so beloved.
Yes,
He's a dog, and he'll say it himself. And the love between him and Starks, because he's Stark, like that's our Starks, like in a different, kind of. So it was a real beautiful season for us, and definitely, a lot of seasons you want to say at the end, like, no, it was a good season, and we didn't get there, but it was okay. It really was under the circumstances. I don't think anyone could be disappointed in this season. And I will still maintain that they are kings of the Garden. They're also the only basketball team in New York. So I don't know what else. So I don't know anyone else.
I'm with you there.
Kings of the Garden, the New York Knicks and their city. Adam Criblez, thank you very much. What's next for you, and how can people find you and talk more about these things?
So not sure next. Like the last book, I had this project in the wings. I love the intersection of sports and media and culture, and so I'm not sure. There's been a lot written about other eras of New York, so I think I got to move off the Knicks, but definitely something still basketball culture related, because I mean, to me it's so intersectional that it's become a passion. So that's definitely the next thing. I do the social media a little bit if you just look for Adam Criblez on X. But my welcome emails, I'm easily found on the Google machine at Southeast Missouri State. I'm happy to talk to people about loving the book or hating the book or whatever. And so I welcome all conversation about this.
That is very cool. Also, just to mention, this is not your first book, and I've been writing a book forever, so I really don't like interviewing authors. I hate most of you, just for the fact that y'all could do it, and you've done it more than once. So the other books that you have out, just a real quick plug for yourself, in case people are interested in those as well.
Sure. So my first one was Parading Patriotism. It's about 19th century celebrations of the 4th of July. It has nothing at all to do with what I currently research.
Yeah.
And the second book was Tall Tales and Short Shorts, Dr. J, Pistol Pete, and the Birth of the Modern NBA. So that's one that looks at the 1970s in the NBA. And I felt like it was an understudied time, and so wrote that one, which drove this one considerably. And so I definitely, again, the basketball history, the basketball culture is super important to me.
That's what's up. Well, listen, like I said, hip hop and basketball go hand in hand for a lot of people. So I expect that some people will be interested in these books. I'll give it a cosign myself. And if you got anything else coming out, or you want us to, spread the love to our people, let us know anytime. I appreciate your time, and it was fun talking to you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. Have a good one. Be safe.
You as well.
There it is. There you have it. All right, we're not done. Go away. Enough. Go away. Enough. It makes it's like the end of the show. Not the end of the show. One time for me.
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one.
There you go. Adam Criblez, author of Kings of the Garden. Oh, I don't cover up his name. The New York Knicks and their city. I love that interview. Just because, maybe I was a little selfish. I hope y'all dug it. I thought it was fascinating. The intersections of hip hop and what do you got? Hip hop in New York City, and those parallels, what was happening at the time. Really good. Really good to hear, because again, hip hop comes from New York, and the Knicks were a part of New York culture, and basketball has always been a part of New York City culture. And from all these things emerged the culture that we celebrate here on Hip Hop Can Save America. Once again, we're here live. We're here live every Monday. Shouts to my man SK, Silent Night in the building. Good to see you, sir. No problem. Got your message. A-OK. Glad you're in the chat. We feature you, by the way, Silent Night, another subscriber, another patron. So I appreciate you. Although I patron him and he patrons me, so it's like matter and dark matter. We cancel each other out. But he supports the show at patreon.com/Manny Faces. You can do that as well, and then I'll say your name with as much love as I say Silent Night, Silent Night's name. with just just love and affection, and Andrew Wang and Raphael Travis and everyone else who jumps in and supports. Really do appreciate the love. Once again, for free, you can contribute there as well. The newsletter. If you like what you heard tonight, if you like what's going on here, if you like the look, feel, taste, smell of everything I'm doing, please subscribe to the newsletter, mannyfaces.substack.com. It's imperative that you do so. We got like 1,600 subscribers there. We got almost 1,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel here. So if you're watching this, make sure you thumbs up, like it, share it. Just give it a quick share to your Facebook or your social, that people know we're rocking. We'll go for a few more minutes. I want to give you a couple more things. I don't know if Raphael's still with us, Raphael Travis. I just want to shout him out for a fantastic, event that he's putting on. It's not a public event, but just to give you the kind of idea of what we're talking about when we talk about people using hip hop, music, and culture for such wonderful things. This is the STEM Beats Camp. STEM, so STEM is being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We like to throw the A in there and make it STEAM for the arts. So ST, STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So STEM becomes STEAM. So you can explore STEM with music and art. This is a 5-week-long initiative that Dr. Travis is doing at Texas State. He's there with the School of Social Work. By the way, you hear me mention his name. You hear me talking about the healing power of hip hop. Dr. Travis literally wrote the book on the healing power of hip hop. He's not very creative. He named it The Healing Power of Hip Hop, which whatever, it's fine. It does the job, I guess. But it's just a seminal book. When you hear me talk about things like intersectionality of hip hop and education, and then I'll always say mental health therapy. It's usually the second thing I'll say because it's just that important. It's up there. And he wrote the book on it. He works at a School of Social Work at Texas State, and also finding ways to incorporate hip hop into different arenas, different subject matters and such. Now, I do a really good keynote, hip hop and technology. It's a keynote I do, and I also do professional development. So if you're a teacher, an educator, if you know teachers and educators, I do a really good workshop on how to use hip hop to engage students with the STEM fields even betterer than they are now. So it's a great way. It's probably one of the best ways that has ever been invented to get young people involved and interested and engaged and excited about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Hip hop can do it. So definitely check out, Rap TJR on Instagram. Again, this is just something he's doing. It's local. It's for folks in the area. I'll be doing a welcoming sort of short opening talk to just tell people how excited I am that this thing exists. I do this regularly. He does this in several different ways, and we do this at this show. So make sure you're tuned in and turned up. No, it's more betterer, Andrew. It's more betterer. In hip hop, we make up our own vocabulary, right? We conversate instead of converse. We can conversate in hip hop. Don't get all Eurocentric education with me. I'm messing with you. But yeah, so just want to shout out one of the great intersections. And then once again, in case you missed it earlier, one very, very important thing that you need to know about coming up in New York City in 2 weeks. I'll be there. I know that Andrew Wang will be there at the pre-conference spitting his game. And there'll be a lot of great, incredible. By the way, Dr. Chris Emden, who is one of the premier faces of the hip-hop education movement. He's one of the founders of the hip-hop ed movement itself. But Yoli Ruiz, super dope educator, and the one, the only, the inimitable educator, practitioner, artist, healer, Tony Blackman. Tony Blackman will be at the Hip Hop Ed Conference in New York City. And yeah, it's going to be a good time. And if you can get there, do so. Registration is now open. If you don't know what I'm talking about, well, it goes a little something like this. Hit it. One of the greatest gifts that hip hop gave us is rap. Well, yes, but I mean also
DJs,
of course, but
breakers, graffiti artists, beatboxers.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, more than just the arts.
Rap's next.
No, hip-hop based education.
Oh, yeah. Wait, what?
I'm Manny Faces, and this is hip-hop news that isn't about dumb shit. June 22nd, 2024, Teachers College, New York City. The Hip-Hop Ed Conference will bring together a plethora of academics and educators and activists who are using the power of hip-hop music and culture to improve the educational lives of students from all walks of life, but most importantly, in communities that have been hindered by racial and economic injustice. Now, to the uninitiated, hip-hop and education together might sound like a strange concept, but if you're in the education space or anything even closely related, I guarantee you this conference will change your entire perspective. So register now. Details are in the video description or on Instagram at Hip Hop Ed. And for more like this, tune into Hip Hop Can Save America, the live stream show, every Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, hiphopcansaveamerica.com/watch. So there you have it. Once again, the Hip Hop Ed Conference. And of course, more hip hop news that isn't about dumb-ish. Only here on the Hip Hop Can Save America live stream show. Thank you for rocking with me tonight. I don't know. I think we're gonna kind of settle in. That might be it for tonight. I do want to say that I did ask some folks, and so I'm gonna share that. Oh, by the way, the other thing that I give on, and I've been doing this lately, and on the newsletter. Again, mannyfaces.substack.com is I'm also at the end. Now, this is for paid members only. So either you're a patron and you give me a couple dollars a month. You don't give it to me. You actually give it to the cause. It doesn't go like I'm buying sneakers. Like I'm putting it into the, into the magic. But if you're a patron or you could actually donate, a couple of people donate through Substack. I guess they just like to be in that ecosystem. It's like $7 a month, which I love. You actually get a sort of hidden section now of the newsletter at mannyfaces.substack.com. And what it is it's recent music drops. So, and shouts to the Phantom, Jeffrey O'Neill, who I was just talking to on Facebook, who was talking about like sometimes we need to know about music for older folk. There was I don't say older folk like we old, but like not the kids. So there's just recently a little controversy dropped like yesterday, maybe today, because Method Man and Redman were performing at Summer Jam. Now, if you know Summer Jam, if you know hip hop, you know what Summer Jam is. Hot 97's annual concert out in New York City. It's been iconic in the past. It's been regular in the recent past. There was, I think it was, I don't want to get everybody on the bill, but it was Sexy Red was on the bill, which again, she's been all over the place this year. So, shouts to her. Sleepy Hollow, which is one of the dudes that Trump brought on stage. There was, I forget like who the main person was. I forget. But again, like sort of younger artists, more like mainstream today's artists, and then Redman and Method Man as I guess the token nod to the old school. And Red and Meth put on a show. So it's but Meth put out a post and was like, hey, not our crowd, never again. We're never gonna do this again. Thanks, Hot 97. Ebro, Peter Rosenberg, thank you, love you, respect you, but we're not doing this again. And I guess it was just such a bad response to, again, who we would look at as legendary performers, Red and Meth. And it's just so interesting the feedback on this, like to see what people are saying about this. The point is that for rap consumers of a certain age, it's not always that easy to find sort of music that we can mess with. It's not that hard either, so I'm not letting everybody off the hook. But it's not always that easy because we obviously can't turn on the radio. It's not going to be there. We can maybe pay for satellite, Sirius XM, but then what do we get? We get Rock the Bells radio, which doesn't really do it. It's more like throwbacks all day, every day. We don't get anything like modern. I've literally heard so many people, and you can do this. If you search on Facebook, just for an example, I don't even listen. And like all I listen to is like, and then hip hop. Like, so if you do like a search for that, you'll find so many people saying, today's music is garbage. That's why all I do is listen to my old stuff. And I'm going to get preachy now, but that is a slap in the face to all of the artists, young and old, who are creating music today that would and does, if you just give it a chance, satisfy your old school DNA. Okay? When Rock Marciano, I just saw a clip of Rock Marciano performing in Germany. Killing it. Whole crowd up like 8 Mile, for Rock Marciano. Comes out. He starts spitting. They know every word. They rocking with him in English. Rocking with Rock Marciano. Now, Rock Marciano's a dope MC. Shouts also Strong Island, right? Dope MC. Grown folk music. Grown folk rap. Like grown folk style. If you telling me that because today's music is garbage and you only listen to the old, you're not listening to Rock Marciano? Then what kind of hip-hop fan are you? Because if you like Ghostface Killer, if you like, like that kind of vibe, you're going to like Rock Marciano. You're going to like Ka. You're going to like Griselda. You're going to like those folks. So you're not peeping them? You're not supporting them? You're not helping them get their numbers up? Because you tell me that you stuck in your little world, but you love hip-hop? So when Meth and Red say, like, we're not going to do this crowd, and and the responses are like, well, yeah, because hip-hop today, blah, 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 blah. Okay, Summer Jam's not the place for them anymore. But that's not to say that you as a consumer there's no hope for the genre that you love. So all I'm saying is I'm trying to help that on the newsletter. And so I share music picks as well. Now I am gatekeeping that part. Now, if newsletter's free, but I am gating that part. You got to make sure that you sign in to the you got to pay. You got to pay to get some of the clips. So I try to give some of the what I can call attention to. And again, it's taste, it's subjective. But I put up like Makami, I put up Silent Night, I put up Rhapsody, I put up Vince Staples, I put up Juicy J, I put up Childish Gambino, I put up the new Common and Pete Rock, I put up Childish Gambino's video, I put up a few other things. So I have pretty good taste. I've been doing this for a long time. Andrew says, I don't have TikTok. There are good emerging artists out there. So 2 things about that. TikTok is actually a good place. I have Sirius XM radio. And I listen to TikTok radio. It's a channel that plays all the TikTok, music. It keeps me aligned with some of the stuff that my daughters listen to, Baby Girl Faces. By the way, the little clip I showed you before about the hip-hop ed thing, guess who's holding the camera? That's right. She's made her camera, what do you call it? Camera operator? Camera operator? Like, not a director. It's not a directorial debut, but because I directed the whole thing. But she was doing the camera operating on it. So shouts to Baby Girl Faces. But I can listen to TikTok radio and I can listen to, and what's that JID song? I know they get you the pound town, surround sound. That's a bop. I don't care if you old and you don't listen to JID joint. Come on, that's a bop. Anyway, so TikTok radio actually has some things to listen to me keep, and it's not too horrible. And there's actually a couple songs in there that are pretty good. And I'm like, oh, see, I would never have been put onto this if I don't give it a chance. Give it a chance. Same thing with Vivo. If you have it on the Samsung, you can get the Vivo channel now. I think it's free. And it's through if you have a Samsung TV, how the TV, what do you call it? The box, Roku or the LG TVs. They have these free channels, and you can get Vivo Hip Hop. And I watched the videos, and a lot of them aren't for me, but some of them I'm really impressed. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Because the thing young people can do with videography now, because they're so creative, you actually just give it a chance is all I'm saying. Andrew Wang, I'm going to push back on the idea that TikTok feels very conservative. He said not to be political. No, it's okay. It's weird you say that. And these social platforms, and this is off topic, but social platforms are going to give you what you take from them. In other words, Who do you follow? Who are you paying attention to? One of the things that TikTok was involved in was actually being they wanted to shut down TikTok for the fact that it was actually being a source where people could get information out about like pro-Palestinian stuff. So people are saying, oh, you want to shut down TikTok because that's where they're getting out the real information. So to say that it's too conservative goes against the people that I understand who were complaining about the idea that the U.S. government started attacking TikTok because it was getting too, I don't say liberal, but you know what I mean, too pro-Palestinian. So again, all these platforms, again, you can say the same thing about Facebook or Twitter. People used to always all the time say Twitter's so garbage. Like all I get is people sharing what they did for lunch and like these like real boomer kind of ways. Oh, not TikTok. You're saying Method Man. What I say. Oh, I see. I thought you were calling TikTok conservative and political. Got you. It's not okay. So just to go back to the other thing, these social media channels and your algorithms will dictate what you get. If you're in a bubble of people who hate today's hip hop, you'll never get someone cutting in with hey, here's a new track by Amerigo Gazaway and Napoleon the Legend, which is dope and you'll love it, and you'll never get that because you're going to surround yourselves with this like Misery Loves Company feel. Going back to the old school music and the Method Man, I wouldn't say conservative. I would certainly say, and this is a longer conversation that Jeffrey O'Neill, aka The Phantom, and I were having on Facebook, where it's like the channels exist for us as older hip hop fans or people like this show. Do you know how many people I talk to all the time? They're like, man, if I only, all these hip hop podcasts are stupid. And if someone could just give me hip hop news that isn't about dumb-ish. And I'm like, I exist, bro. I'm here. We're here. Our community is here. It's small, but it's growing and it's passionate. But how do we make that happen? How do we do it when we don't have the machine behind us? Certainly nobody wants us to talk about hip hop as a political power or as an educational force like we do here. No one's offering that. Like I exist. People know who I am. Nobody's come to me and be like, hey, can we sponsor the show? No one's saying, hey, I have a hip hop network of, a media network. We'd love to post your episodes every week because you're doing good content and we feel like this is good. No one's doing that. I don't take it personal, but at the same time, it's like, that's not the answer. The answer isn't, I said this before when I was saying, we can't ask for the mainstream to be the savior for hip hop music and culture. Audre Lorde tells us you can't tear down the master's house with the master's tools if this is a concerted effort to keep hip hop dumb or keep hip hop entertainment based. And we want to do something extra. We can't go through the same channels, which is why I'm working on some things behind the scenes. What I'm thinking about, Andrew, I'm going to say that people have been doing this for a long time and I get it. And they're pushing their agendas and they're great, but they haven't done it. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened yet. So I'm telling you some answers and I appreciate y'all supporting me. I'm not going to get too political myself. There's some things I think that need to be done. And I'm not the savior of this thing. I'm just a guy and we're getting way off topic, but there are ways to do this that haven't been explored yet because people are stuck in the idea that we have to use the things that already exist. They want to go back to the time when it was for them. And that's not the way it's going to happen. So when a Method Man says we're not supposed to be at Hot 97 Summer, yeah, you're not supposed to be at Summer Jam. No problem. It's fine. Let Sexy Red come off. Let her do her thing. I have no problem with Sexy Red. I have no problem with Sexy Red being on the Roots picnic. I have a problem with the hypocrisy or the idea that we can't find our own channels. If you want more from hip hop, subscribe to the show. Tell your friends. Be like, shut up. Go listen to what Manny's doing That's it. That's the answer. But they don't want to listen. Oh, you want more from hip hop? You want to talk about more subscribe to Manny Faces Up, Substack.com. Fine. Don't want to do me? Fine. Let me not be the center of everything. You know what I mean? Go to the Hip-Hop Ed Conference and talk to people how they're using hip-hop in different ways. So now you, as an adult, you can go to your Board of Education and you can say, hey, I just went to this Hip Hop Ed conference in New York City and there was mad teachers there and they're using hip hop in the schools and all these kids are doing better and I want my kids to do better. So are we doing Hip Hop Ed in our school district, Mr. Superintendent? And see what they say. But we're not doing that because we don't like the fact that hip hop on the radio is not, come on, man. Y'all not even really putting in the work. So don't tell me y'all want revolution and you're not going to put in the work. So I'm trying to make it easy. I'm trying to develop the platforms and do the things. And I love your support in the meantime. So if you wonder where like the money's going, if you wonder like why I do this every week when I got 10 people watching and maybe 100 or 200 watching or maybe 1,000 listening on the podcast, that's why. Because we're building up to something, right? We're building up to something where we're going to say, okay, here's what we could look at the world and say, you know, I'll end with this. I love the Hip Hop Museum. I love the Universal Hip Hop Museum and those folks. But one of the problems I've had with several organizations that have tried to become the Hip Hop Museum or the Hip Hop Hall of Fame is that they ask for money from the people. They ask for money from the people. And that's why I'm very reluctant to ask y'all for contributions every month. But you got to do it. If you don't do it, I go away. I got to go. I can't survive. I can't keep doing it. So y'all got to do it. But okay. So when you ask the people for the dollars or the contributions or whatever, and then the initiative doesn't succeed, then you just paid for someone's salary for a few years and this thing never happened. That's why I like making content because, I go away because I just can't do it anymore. The content lives on. These organizations have disappeared. The Hip Hop Museum in New York City is like the fourth iteration of such an idea, but from different people that never came to be. So anyone who donated before, and it was easy to do because we were like, hey, we're doing a Hip Hop Museum. And they're like, oh, a Hall of Fame. And they're like, oh my God, take my money, right? That meme, right? Take my money. And then it doesn't exist. It's like they disappeared. So I've always been against, and the Universal Hip Hop Museum, now known as the Hip Hop Museum, has done the same thing. And I push back on asking the people for money, and that's why I'm reluctant to do it to y'all. But I'm not the Hip Hop Museum because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame didn't have to do a Kickstarter. They got grants and they got funding from the state, the city, and all that. And now the Hip Hop Museum is getting a lot of that, $5 million from the state, and the city's contributed, and they're getting money. Microsoft, we had Darrell Booker on. Microsoft is giving them some money plus. So now they're doing the thing, and I get it's hard because nobody respects hip hop on that level. So I get it. I get the conundrum that they're in. So I'm not mad at them for it. I'm just, But the point I'm making here is that we can't do it the way that like we're trained to do it. We have to look at other institutions and organizations and say and foundations and philanthropy and say, I say this all the time, ballet exists today not because so many people come out and pay for ballet. Ballet is funded, or maybe ballet, classical music, all the arts programs. These things are funded philanthropically by people who say this is valuable cultural, content, and we need to preserve it and protect it and promote it. But yet we're asking people for Kickstarters and give me money on Patreon. No, we've got to break through and find a way to make those old institutions, those old ways of doing things, accept us. Now, there's a big thing about hip hop. Like, we don't need their validation. We don't need to be in the ivory tower. We don't need to be in the academia. We we do, but we need to be in there. We need to be somebody who controls the funding in the Ford Foundation. Got to be a hip hop head. At some point, we have to be in there. So what we got to do is keep knocking down those doors, busting down them doors, getting up in the inside, and then saying, okay, now how can we fund the Manny Faces of the world? Now how can we fund the Chosen Zulus of the world? How can we fund healing power of hip hop? So that we don't have to scratch and scramble and fight for the same little droppings. I tell you, I'll really leave with this. This is a couple years ago, I spoke to a company run by a journalist. Now, I'm not going to say who this is. I'm not going to do that. The journalist is well respected, definitely has done some work with, I guess, raising issues that are of concern to minorities, and definitely have touched upon some hip hop stuff as well, and is like a serious journalist. And so I approached with an idea that I have for like some serious hip hop journalism, like what I'm doing here. And I didn't speak to the journalists themselves. They had like a person that kind of, I don't know, fields these things. And I gave him sort of a pitch to something like what I'm doing now, but on a bigger, better, broader scale, like something that's worthy of hip hop, as we know it. And they, oh yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. And in the conversation, it was like, well, what I'd really like to explore. And then they mentioned a particular rapper of some acclaim who had been murdered. And they were like, I'd really like to go into the story of, what this person, what their come up was, the thing that happened, and then, the murder. And so we're not going to get the results we need going to the people that are, already out there. We got to figure out how they got to that point and go around those, I don't know, those roadblocks to what we're doing and find ways to finance or get things together. So we can't just keep doing the things that we've been trying to do. We can't keep asking for assistance. We have to bust down the doors. So anyway, that's my whole spiel tonight. Has nothing to do with what we talked about earlier. Kings of the Garden. It does have to do with the newsletter and the things we put out there. It's this kind of information that's important and this kind of movement that we're building. So I do appreciate you. I'm working on some other things, and hopefully some of this stuff that I'm just rambling about tonight, y'all help me think it out. Like sometimes I got to just talk it out, and so I appreciate y'all. Anyway, we'll be back next week. I was out last week. I was in Ireland. You might have seen it on my Instagram. Hey, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I also share stuff during the week. And I also share events and stuff that doesn't make the newsletter because they may be quick or timely. And of course, they don't make it to the show because by the time we do Monday show, they're already done. Good guests coming up. So again, we're keeping it going. Your contributions are going to a good place. Spoke to a really interesting cat about a really interesting combination of hip hop and Andrew, you might like this. It's a way to, how you do notation, like notes and music. This guy developed a system to do that for turntablism, for scratches. You could actually have turntable not notification, notation. And it was a really cool conversation. That'll probably drop on Monday. Got a couple things lined up, including my man Ramal Rahman from the Hip Hop Congress. So they've got a good organization. They're doing a big event out in California. We're going to talk to him about it, and we're going to share that with you. And of course, the newsletter is going to keep coming out, and I'm going to share you information. If you're going to be in New York for the Hip Hop Ed conference, come see me. Come say hi to me. Let's talk. And if you have people that you think should be on this show, let me know. I know Andrew, you're always giving me some folks. I know a lot of people. Bob Knudsen, thanks for checking in. I love the way you always expand your horizons. I think it'll help you greatly in your political career if you're going to keep on doing that. If you need a, hip hop political consultant, I'm your guy. Let's get that happening. I'm going to actually be putting out something about that. This is a political season. I think that every politician should have a hip hop consultant in their camp. Interesting. I'm working on a piece that I'll release. And yeah, that's it. I don't know. I'm just kicking it. I'm back from Ireland. Shouts to the Global Cypher, European Hip Hop Studies Network. I was out there in Ireland. I presented. I met some great people. Rock with some good people that I already knew from over here. Working on some stuff in Atlanta. If you're in Atlanta, hit me up. I've got maybe a conference that we're trying to put together. I've got some other initiatives on the sort of podcast media tip. And so that's great. So yeah, all these things. All right, y'all. I'm out. Peace and love. Thanks for everyone checking in. I'll be back next Monday. Higher power willing. All right, that's it. We out. Peace.
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick.